Hello and welcome to Kicking Tires. My name is Jimmy,
And I'm Justin.
and today this show is sponsored by Porsche. Not really, but it's gonna feel like it because we got a lot of Porsche news to share.
Yeah, not too much else going on in the industry. Porsche is keeping it fresh. Last week we had the new touring model GT3, and this week we've got a lot of Porsche news again. First up is the Cayenne. What is this? The Turbo S Coupe? Turbo Coupe? Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure that you can stack every name onto it.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, they're all turbos now, and they're all. Well, you can either choose a coupe or the traditional SUV variant. Yeah, new SUV record 738.9, 7 minutes 38 seconds. Like that is huge, because that's 3 seconds faster than the previous record, which was set by the RSQ8 pretty recently. Now this is not like just like off the showroom lot kind of car. It does have a roll cage and better P0 Corsa tires. Those are basically a track specific tire. And it's got a racing seat. So there's definitely weight savings there and rigidity added and way better tires. But it's still really impressive for something that heavy, because even though it looks sleek and it's a coupe, it's still quite substantial in terms of weight. It's still a Cayenne after all. It's not a small car. It's not a Macan.
So just
Yeah.
to put a little bit of context to 738. So 738 may not mean a lot to some people. But just to put a little bit of context, 738 it's the same time as like a Ferrari 458 Italia, the Lexus LFA, the F90's M5. It's faster than an F430, a 911 Turbo, 997 generation, definitely a little bit older, like even faster than a Bugatti Veyron.
Yeah, and remember back in the day, about 12 years ago, when the R35 generation GTR came out, 738 was a time that broke the internet. Everyone was like, "There's no way this car can do 738," and people were debating it. And there might have been a little bit of cheating going on, with the tires and with the interior and stuff like that, but that was over a decade ago. And so things have advanced in terms of tire technology and overall engineering and just the power delivery. And yeah, 738 a decade ago only was reserved for top tier sports cars, supercars, and that sort. Um, it's still a super respectable time today.
Mm-hmm.
So, let alone as an SUV that has
So
decent trunk space and whatnot.
here's my take on it. Um, sure, it's really fast, but who's buying a Porsche Cayenne Turbo to take it to the track? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't feel like yes, it's very fast, it's super cool, but it's like just full bragging rights at this point. It's
It
not so
is.
much like, hey, I got a fast car that I'm gonna take to the track. Because like
Yeah, no. This is still a rodeo drive kind of car. Like it's a Beverly Hills sugar mama kind of car.
you're
It's
you're
still
you're much better off picking up a GT3 or just a 911, just the regular one, and then you pick up regular Porsche Cayenne E hybrid to have maximum efficiency around town. You know,
yeah.
a better
No,
two
it's
car
not about
garage.
being practical. At the end of the day, these are $200,000 plus super SUVs. And so it is impressive because the Cayenne is kind of like, I don't want to say it's like the everyman Porsche, but you do see a decent amount of them, right?
Well,
It's
here in Vancouver, it's just inevitable.
Yeah, like it's a decent seller, and we've got super SUVs out there as well. From Aston Martin, Lamborghini's got theirs, Audi's got theirs. So for Cayenne to kind of set the benchmark, I think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
As far as performance SUVs go, BMW's got all theirs, AMG's got a bunch, and yeah, this is the one to beat, which is I think that's huge.
So
Um,
It's actually 9 seconds faster than the Lamborghini Urus.
which is pretty substantial. I don't
Yeah.
know how prep that Urus is. Um, if it's done by Sport Auto, they like to do them like showroom stock.
Hmm.
So the ones done by Horst von Sarma, those are all stock cars, as stock as possible. So this one definitely has some advantage. Now, the thing about tracking an SUV, I do see them from time to time. I do see a Macan or a Cayenne or an X5M on track. Even at the local courses, people will take these out. The thing you have to note if you're tracking these is the wear and tear on a 5,000 pound vehicle is insane.
Hmm.
Like, of course, you're talking about someone who can afford to take a $200,000 SUV to the track, but it's not as enjoyable just because of how much stress that does to the car and how quickly tires wear, brakes, brake fluid technology has not really advanced in a decade, right? Tires have gone, you can shave a lot of time with modern tires, but brake fluid has not changed that much, and physics at the end of the day still applies. There's great brakes on these carbon ceramics, big huge brakes with lots of cooling, but even then it's still not going to be as good and as, how you say, reproducible as if you were to take a 911 or a Cayman, because this car can do it, can set a pretty respectable time, but how many laps can it do it for?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that, the track day specials, that's where they differ. We're not talking about magazine times. We're talking about real world. How consistent are you? How's the average Joe going to run in it? And stuff like that, that I think matters more in terms of sports cars, is, yeah, how much can you repeat that? Because if it's a one lap wonder, that's doesn't really mean anything in the real world. Um, yeah, I think the cornering level of these SUVs are insane now, and it's barely an SUV. Like, it's so close to the ground.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's really not an SUV.
yeah,
It's just a car with slightly more headroom. That's what it comes down to now.
yeah, decent trunk, decent back seat,
Well,
but the ground
not this
clearance
one.
of a
You don't
Camry, basically,
you don't really get that much trunk space in this specific one. The
because it's
coupes
got a
were
roll cage too.
yeah, you can't even carry any people in the back. It's pretty useless as an SUV standpoint.
Yeah, not much of an SUV, but something that's completely not an SUV. How about the new? Well, not even the new record set by the GT2 RS. I believe this is the 991 generation GT2 RS. Let's click over to the next slide. So 6 minutes 43. So that's almost 1 minute faster than the Cayenne Turbo Coupe. 1 minute faster than the RSQ8. So this is the next level. This is insane. Like 643. Again, these are those times that every manufacturer is trying to one up each other in this sub 650 range. Um, Previously, we were looking at 647, but with this GT2 RS with the new Michelin Sport Cup 2R tires, so the R is really important. Technically a street legal tire, but take that with a grain of salt. I've driven on the Sport Cup 2. Sport Cup 2, I guess it is pretty streetable. You do pick up like every rock, and it doesn't last very long. But and you definitely don't want to park it in sub-zero temperatures. But yeah, technically a street legal DOT tire with a 643. So that's huge. And that seems to be the tire that everyone is setting their records on. AMG GT, that they've got the new Black Series AMG GT setting that kind of time, 643. Now, one thing Porsche mentioned is that this 643, this is based on a different lap or racetrack configuration. They said that if you go on the old configuration, that's another 4 or 5 seconds. So technically, this is huge. Like, but here's the thing with both the Cayenne and the GT2, and every other car that builds it for Nürburgring lap times, I hate using Nürburgring lap times as a benchmark. I think there's just too many turns. You can't reproduce it because they are it tends to favor that one lap wonder. You have one driver, you mess up a corner slightly and you throw off your whole lap. And that's how lapping is essentially. And I think the Nürburgring is just not scientific or empirically repeatable enough to say that that is the time. That's why we're seeing such a big variance with just tires and just weather and just so many variables that come into play. That's why I don't like the Nürburgring. I much prefer like a much shorter track, like a Laguna Seca or something like that. That's sub 2 minutes, but you can run 5 of those in 10 minutes, and you could just see, okay, we can take the best of that. Um, and from there, I think it's more valuable to me. I don't care as much if it could do one really fast lap because that to me I can't reference how that is compared to another car because another car, different day, different weather, it all matters.
Mhm.
And that's the problem with the Nürburgring. And I don't support kind of this arms race with Nürburgring lap times.
No, it
Uh,
totally makes sense. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of variables with
mhm.
this many corners. I mean, even the best drivers can't have the same repeat kind of lap times in that long of a course. In a shorter track like Laguna Seca, I mean, even Laguna isn't like even like super short, but they're able to produce more
Yeah.
like just consistent lap times in that than they would do on the ring.
Yeah, because I can run 5 minutes or not 5 minutes. I can run 5 laps at mission and be within zero point 0.1 seconds lap after lap after lap. So that gives me a really good reference of what kind of times I'm running in whatever car I'm running that day. And same with guys that are running a Laguna. They're running the same time lap after lap. If you can run within a zero point 0.1 or 0.2 second difference lap after lap, that is like pretty solid as far as uh, where that car really performs. If you have one lap that's a fluke, I don't know. To me, I take it with a grain of salt. It doesn't necessarily mean that the car that technically lapped the Nürburgring 2 seconds slower is actually slower because it's just there's too much there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, 100% agree. It's more like, hey, it can do it. Here's a record, but it doesn't really provide much to the average buyer. And speaking of the average buyer, we got some updates to the regular 911 lineup.
Yeah, the new GTS model. So far we've had up until this point for 992, we've had the Carreras, obviously. We've had the Turbo. We've seen the GT3 and a touring model of the GT3 and a Turbo S. So GTS was introduced. I guess it was the previous generation, 991,
Yeah.
and with that one, it's kind of the value pack as far as like all the performance upgrades at a kind of bundle price is kind of how you can look at it. And you can see this with the Caymans as well. The Cayman GTS right now with the 4 liter is quite the performance bargain because you can't even get your hands on a GT4 without getting bent over backwards by the dealership. GT4 lures you in with what seems like a reasonable MSRP, but you cannot buy it for that price until you've lost a lot of money to the dealership and earned your spot in line for that car. But the GTS model for the Cayman, you get the more powerful engine, you got the better brakes, and a bunch of other performance things that if you were to option a Cayman S up, you're there already. But because it's a GTS, when it comes time to resell it and anything, technically it is a higher tier car. Um, so that's kind of how we have the 992 generation GTS, right? So GTS is available in the Carrera rear-wheel drive configuration, Carrera 4, and the Targa 4. So Targa 4's got that funky sunroof kind of thing that gives you that open top experience. Um, with the little hoop behind. Now with the GTS model, the hoop is all black, and that's kind of the theme with GTS. And GTS so far with the all the models that have come before, both the Cayenne's got a GTS. I think pretty much every Porsche has a GTS at some point. So this is, I guess, a year or two after the original 992 debuted. Now we have this model, which is just a slight boost to what you get from a base Carrera. So extra 30 horsepower, which is not that much considering these are turbo cars now. So squeezing an extra 30 horsepower, like that was on the table. I don't know if there's actually any mechanical and internal differences with this
Probably
engine.
not.
Yeah, and so that's kind of okay, whatever. 30 horsepower. You may or may not feel that. It's a 3-liter flat six, and it carries over a lot of the upgrades that you get on the turbo, the actual turbo, not to be confused because they're all turbos now, but the turbo. Um,
I,
so
I
that
love how
includes the
I love how we have to like say specifically it's the turbo one, like the one with the actual turbo badge in the back, not just
yeah,
the one with a turbo on the engine.
yeah, having a turbo, and then it gets more confusing when you talk about the electric cars that have turbo, the hybrids. Yeah, but basically we're getting the center lock wheels, so saves a little bit of weight. It's very motorsports oriented in that sense. It just makes your car that much harder to service. But because of that, you're also getting the turbo brakes. So it's built to a higher spec. You know, you have to remember the turbo's got 100 horsepower more than this, a lot more weight. And so having the brakes and suspension off of the turbo onto a car that's lighter and with less power, it is a good thing.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, you're also getting the sport exhaust as standard and PASM, which is Porsche's active suspension kind of thing. And they're going to be available in both the PDK and the 7-speed manual. So you're not stuck with, you can have it either way, which that might be the way of the future for all 911s ever since the news from last week, which was about the exhaust noise.
They've updated it. You can now buy a manual 911 in California.
Nice. Yeah, they finally slapped some sense into them, I guess. They're like, this is an archaic rule that doesn't actually, there's no real world difference in
Not at
terms of
all.
what kind of volume that exhaust is generating. Another thing for the GTS that is available is the lightweight design package. So lightweight design package that saves they say up to 25 kilograms. I don't know why it's up to and not a specific number.
I think it's because it depends on the if it's a coupe or the Targa.
Oh, the Targa, yes, because of the rear window.
Yeah,
So yeah, the lightweight design package, carbon buckets, but carbon buckets are technically available in all Porsches pretty much, all two doors at least. So that's nothing new there, but those seats do save a decent amount of weight. I'm surprised it's only 25 kilograms because we're talking about not only the carbon buckets, but also lighter weight rear and side windows and a lighter weight battery. So I guess it's a lithium battery and a rear seat delete because you couldn't do that yourself, apparently. It's just two bolts, I think.
I think I'm sure they give you some sort of shelf now
Yeah, a
instead.
shelf would be nice. Yeah. The rear seats in a 911 really don't weigh anything because they're not meant to be used by anyone. So there's like it's like the size of a binder and it weighs maybe like a
About as much as a binder.
combined a full binder. Granted, not an empty one off the shelf, but a full one. Probably like 5 or 6 pounds there for both seats.
Yeah,
But yeah,
definitely not
parcel
much.
shelf works. So, I mean, in a sense, the parcel shelf would make more sense because you can use that now to store stuff. Because humans don't really fit back there, anyways.
Yeah,
But yeah, GTS, nothing too surprising here. It is kind of we know what Porsche does with their GTS models. It's just kind of refreshing the namesake of the Carreras and just gives you another way to spec out your Porsche because there's so many different trim levels now, and you can really have it your way. Like they let you get the rear wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. They let you get a hard top or the target top, and you could get different power levels because the base 911 is quite, I guess, modest in terms of the power. I think it's under 400 horsepower, which for 911 in 2021 is kind of low.
Yeah. Here's the thing for me, the GTS model. The one thing that doesn't make sense is the GTS is supposed to be the one that's a little bit more edgy, a little bit lighter, but then they get you the Targa. The Targa is like pretty heavy. It's like
Yeah,
it just doesn't mix with the GTS vibe in my books. You know what I mean? Just because it is a heavier vehicle. But I personally love the Targa because I've seen it in action. I love how that dome like comes up and it just looks super cool. Absolutely, useless and nowhere near as good as a full-on convertible or full-on coupe because it's kind of the middle of both, but it just looks really cool.
yeah. It looks good with the top up or down or
Yeah,
close or open. Um, Fair point. I think the Targa really took off with the 991 generation,
yeah,
and people were like, the Cabrio looks awkward almost. And I think going with the Targa really helped. It maintains that same roof line and the overall same profile, but it just
yeah.
cleans things up a little bit.
Well, I mean, the older Targas weren't really a Targa, anyways. It was just a glass roof that can
For the
slide down.
993 to 997, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, prior to that, we did have real Targas, like
actual Targa.
traditional one piece roof. And then, yeah, later on, it became the convertible with a sunroof.
Yeah, just a bigger
A
summer.
fixed, a fixed kind of sunroof. Yeah,
Yeah.
glass top.
It
Um,
still looks cool in my books. I actually really like them.
yeah, no, I think even the 993 Targa is like you look at it, and like there's something different. Like if you don't know anything about cars and you look at 993 Targa and you're like, why does that coupe look a little bit different? Like it's not just a panoramic sunroof,
Yeah,
but it's because it's based off of the Cabrio, so it has a slightly different look to it.
yeah.
I think I don't know. I think having a GTS version of the Targa is okay.
Mm,
It's still the sportier, edgier version of that because the
right.
Targa is is a boat compared to the regular coupe, so just kind of bringing it up to pace. And yeah, the regular Carrera, so the Carrera S is at 444 horsepower. This is 30 more than that, and then the base Carrera is 385, or
Mm,
no, 380, which is really not that much because like cars like the 340i and S4 S5, those are in that range, so it's not crazy in terms of power. Now, obviously, with the power delivery and the PDK, it does get a lot out of that 380 horse, but
yeah.
it is just 380 horse for over 100 and something grand.
I don't
Yeah.
they also like kind of downplay their power as well as their acceleration levels?
Oh yeah, Porsche has always
Yeah.
understated their power levels, and their 0 to 60 times, given the power to weight of the vehicle, is always better than most of its competition.
Right.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's also a benefit of having that much weight over the
On
rear
the
wheels.
rear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes total sense.
Mhm.
But let's get back to reality. These while some people can afford Porsche 911s, I can't. So let's talk about the Tundra. That's actually the
I
one that I'm
can't
looking
afford
at.
this
I
one
probably can't
either.
afford this one either. The TRD Pro version.
Yeah. So what happened with the Tundra? Why did Toyota leak this
So,
out?
so Toyota had a massive leak on their hands, or so they said, or it could be just a PR kind of experiment.
Stunt.
So they had the Tundra leaked in a photo, and everyone got a hold of it. There was leaks all over the web, and it was just like a blurry image of the Tundra. And while it looked good, and people were just speculating on whatever there was, Toyota's like, hey, we got a Civ here. Why not just get rid of the Civ and show you exactly what it looks like? So Toyota themselves has given us the full look on the Tundra itself. So like here it is, but not giving you any details whatsoever.
Yeah.
But
Same with the engine and all that stuff.
yeah, so here are some things that we can assume. Looking at this one, this is definitely the TRD Pro. So this is the top trim. It actually says that on the hood louvers on the side.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me a little bit like Silverado,
Trail
Trail
Boss.
Boss, yeah, AT4 kind of look. It's like that blocky, chunky look. The wheels are kind of weird. It's kind of like a 6-spoke, but kind of hollow. The light bar that's integrated underneath the Toyota badge is also kind of weird. Not sure
A
how
little
legal.
bit out of place.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure how legal that would be, because I know generally speaking, light bars you have to have a cover on it for it to be legal. So, not sure exactly where that's going. There's also auxiliary lights on the lower grille as well, and that's not like the daytime running lights, because the daytime running light is part of the headlight. So there's a lot of lighting up front, including
Mm-hmm.
the 3 lights that probably this doesn't need because it probably isn't that wide. So the lights is kind of like the
I
foreigner.
I don't know. So 80 inches is the rule of thumb, I guess.
Hmm.
That's why the Raptor has those grill lights. And this TRD Pro looks like it has a little bit more fender flare going on. That might be what pushes it beyond that
I
number.
don't think it's 80. I just don't think it's Raptor width.
It looks way bigger than the current Tundra.
Yeah.
I did notice one thing. It's got 6 lug wheels now. Hopefully,
Hmm.
that was the weird thing about the Tundra and the Sequoia beforehand. Well, one of the weird things about that truck is that it has its own fitment and its own bolt pattern that
Oh.
not really anyone used. And going to the 6x139, if that's what they're doing, that's going to bring it in line with the Tacoma, all the Lexus trucks, Land Cruiser, and also GM's trucks also use that bolt pattern. So
It'll
makes
be
sense. Like just bring it to 6 lug.
it'll be easier for you to find some fuel wheels.
Oh yeah, and the old one, it was weird because the fitment, the offset was like in the 50s.
Oh, on a
So
truck.
so yeah, and most truck wheels come in. They start around 20, but they're usually around 0 offset. And
Right.
so the old Tundra was really awkward to fit. Now, one thing I noticed with this one, the fender, the wheel wells are cut very square, like the GM trucks.
Right.
I don't like that look, and it hurts your ability to put bigger tires on it
Hmm.
generally. Ram has always been really good for putting bigger tires on. Ford's been okay with that. GM has by far been the worst. Like if you need to put a big tire on a GM, anything maybe more than an inch, you're gonna have to lift it like 6 inches and make
Hmm.
the truck unusable and just drive completely wrong. And square fenders, just wheels are round, right? Like
Wait, they're what?
I don't know why square fenders became a thing. And I mean, to be fair, they're not perfectly square, but they're more
It's more that
square.
macho look, I guess, right? A rounded fender a lot of times is kind of more
Yeah,
just you don't want a rounded vehicle when it's kind of a squared off body, which this
somewhat.
vehicle has a lot of. Like that front bumper, there's
It's
like
very angular.
it has a Thanos chin on that. That's
It's
what it looks like.
I don't think it's a pretty truck by any means, and the Toyota grill is huge. Like the Toyota badge going across the front, that's at least what 3 feet long. Like
It
it's
looks
huge.
wide. It definitely looks
It's
wide.
it's it's a wide one. And speaking of wide, the infotainment got slightly leaked. So Toyota's just messing around with us now.
Yeah, they are. So there's a not a leaked, but a teaser photo that they posted of the interior of the Tundra. So we can see not much more than the front windshield from the inside. We see a little bit of the steering wheel, which has this red stripe on top. So it's like a
Mhm.
Raptor. So you know exactly where your wheel is pointing, or a Porsche 911 GT3 RS, because, it's exactly the same thing.
Yep.
There's a really wide infotainment screen that has CarPlay on there. And from what I can see, that CarPlay is on wireless. And how I can see that is the little signal on it. It looks like it's like the wireless charging pad signal rather than a plug-in signal. That's what it looks like, but it's so hard to see because it's tiny.
Yeah.
But it does look like it's a wide screen, like a 10 and a quarter or so inch screen.
Mhm. And it sticks quite high up, which I think is nice because the RAM, a lot of it is going, like most of what's going on is down low-ish. Same with the F-150. They're a little bit lower set. This one's got the tablet style that we're seeing in a lot of passenger cars that just brings it all up a little bit, which I guess a little bit less distracting. I don't know. Some people have different takes on that. I don't mind the stick up screen at all, but I know some people like that cleaner, flush look.
So I talked to a friend of mine who does a lot of off-roading, and in his Foreigner, he actually put like an auxiliary GPS, not like a Garmin thing. It's one that's designed for off-road so that you can map out trails and whatnot. He was saying that because of this design, he may not be able to have that mounted on top. So he doesn't like it that much, actually.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there's other areas. I mean, this is a huge truck.
Oh yeah, I'm
Um,
sure there's many more places you can stick it.
yeah, it's a Tundra. I mean, the Tundra is an important truck because, like I said before, this truck is here to stay. Like really here to stay. Like they don't update it for a decade, so they've got to get it right.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're really making us excited about this truck. I think it's working. Like
Yeah.
I do care about what is going into this truck. I really care what engine is going in. I think it's going to shake things up for a bit because for our last few years, I mean, you kind of don't have a choice with the Japanese manufacturers. Like if you want a half ton, I don't think you really a lot of people would buy a Japanese brand. Um, because of where Ford and Chrysler or Ram are positioned. Like I don't see any reason to buy a Tundra, but this one might do it.
Yeah. I mean, definitely helps them because looking at the current one, it's not attractive. It really isn't. The
Yeah.
interior, there's nothing about it. I mean, the Titan, when that got refreshed, that was a slight refresh. It still made it more attractive than,
Yeah.
you
But
know,
to take buyers away from the domestic brands,
it's
that
so
is
hard.
what you need. I think that the Tundra, the current gen Tundra back in '08 did manage that for a little bit, right? But then they start giving up on that truck and that's what happened is that 5.7 that's in there now and back then for 15 years ago, that 5.7 is awesome. Like it's really decent on gas. I just drove my friends yesterday actually. Still gets like 17.5, 18 liters per 100K, which for that type of truck, it's good and it's fast. Like it feels
Um,
peppier than my Coyote.
I
Um,
That's 17 and a half. Jeez.
for a
I've been
V8, I mean, we're
okay.
comparing with the Hemi, with the
I
Coyote.
I've
Uh,
driven the Silverado, not Silverado,
oh, the GM stuff is way better on
the
gas.
GMC, whatever that's called, it's missing. Like
The
I'm not.
5.3
I No, there was a 6.2 that I
6.2
drove.
with the
The
cylinder
Denali.
deactivation.
Yeah, I drove from my house, which is in Vancouver, to Coquitlam. Not super far. It was like 50, 40 kilometers or so. Not super far.
Yeah.
I averaged 10 point something. It was under 11 liters for 100 kilometers. I mean, I was being super careful,
Yeah.
but all city, like under 11 liters for 100 kilometers, I was astonished from what a 6.2 liter V8 got me.
Yeah, because it's functioning more like a 2-liter four-cylinder if you drive it lightly.
Yeah.
And fair enough. And even my 5-liter V8 gets, if I drive it gently, it gets 16. Factory, it got 15 before I put on the tires and spacers and all that
So
shit.
before you ruin it.
Yeah, before I ruined it, like I did with my RAV4, it was getting 15 like pretty consistently. 15, I think, for that big of a vehicle with almost 400 horsepower, like
It's pretty
really
good.
reasonable. Yeah,
It's pretty
super
good
reasonable. But I think 17 is still reasonable for a
for
15-year-old
back
engine,
then. Yeah,
and it's a
absolutely.
15-year-old engine that will last you uh,
Million miles.
a million miles,
Yeah.
because the 6.2 has been super problematic. The latest iteration of that 6.2 that GM's that's going in the Escalades, the Yukons, that one is not holding up.
Hmm.
A lot of engineering issues with them, valves going through the block. It's
That's
that
where
will
they
not
belong.
make it to a million. Yeah, that one for sure. A lot of people are having issues with them. Um, the 5.3 is kind of the smarter choice, I would say. Even though it doesn't sound like it on paper, it's barely the 6.2 is you're not taking a real hit on fuel economy, but
Hmm.
just if you want a reliable work truck, the 5.3 is enough. And I think that's why I think the Trail Boss you can only get in a 5.3, or did they
I think
change that?
I think they changed that you can get it with the 6.2 now. I could be wrong. They keep changing things up at
Yeah,
Chevy,
yeah.
so it's
But
hard
the
to say.
5.3 is just fine. Like and it still does a cylinder deactivation. And I drove that 5.3 and it gets like 13 something. Like if you drive it nicely. Um, Not so good when it tows though. That's
No.
one thing I notice.
Well,
Um, yeah.
yeah. Well, let's move on to the QX60. This was released today. This, of course, is like the bread and butter for Infiniti.
Hmm.
They've been selling a lot of cars, but nowhere near as much as this. The QX60 is based off the Pathfinder, and it's exactly the same here. No real difference in terms of that. But this has to be successful for them, for Infiniti to
To even
keep
survive.
to survive. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I want to talk about a few things, but first the looks. The front end is, of course, very Infiniti. You got the Infiniti grille, the piano key LED headlights. It looks good. It definitely has that Infiniti vibe. Very similar to the QX55, in my opinion, on the front end, which is gorgeous. I love the styling. The side is bland. It's super bland.
It's a Nissan. A
It's
pillar to D pillar with that black roof. That is 100% just a Nissan.
there's nothing there to make it an Infinity, and that's the sad truth about the side. And what I don't like about it is the plastic body cladding that it has. So around the wheels, it's hard to see, but it's plastic. The QX60 from before, it was all body colored. Even though the Pathfinder was all body colored,
Yeah,
by tacking on this plastic, I know it gives it a little bit more of that rugged SUV vibe, but
but
it
there's
cheapens the overall look of the vehicle for me.
yeah, there's nothing that's really meant to be rugged on this
No.
SUV. And so body color, you're right. Body color would make sense. Gloss black, I feel like would be a lot of designers would want to go gloss black,
Yeah.
but I would advise against it. Um, I would take the plastic over the gloss black.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
plastic over gloss black, personally, absolutely. Even if it's like a dual tone, like a high gloss gray, I wouldn't mind that
Hmm.
much. And then we get to the back where I'm sorry, it just doesn't look enough difference compared to the Pathfinder. I mean, it is different, absolutely, but it's not enough of a difference. And then what's with these chrome things on the bottom?
They're not. They don't resemble exhausts at all. Like they're.
I
I trying to think of what they remind me of. I want to say like it looks like something in the kitchen. I don't. It doesn't
they,
look automotive to
they
me.
don't belong there by any means. You have a exhaust just on the passenger side there, so it points down. I don't know what this is supposed to be. Maybe a skid plate, but it definitely doesn't look the part. You do have a hitch in the middle. Chances is you'll be towing exactly the same as the Pathfinder, which is more than it ever towed before, thanks to that 9-speed automatic rather than the CVT that it had before.
Mhm.
But I
Okay, so it is super bland, but I think it looks handsome. Like I think this design will age well, and I don't think it's ugly, but you're right. It is very similar to the Pathfinder. And that's kind of been Infiniti's downfall, is that so far Nissan's upped their interior game so much that there's really no point buying an Infiniti anymore. You're getting the same Bose sound system. It's not like Toyota where okay, you can't get some of that high end feature with a Toyota that you have to get it on a Lexus, but Nissan's basically giving you everything. You can get the 360 cameras, you can get all that, and yeah, the steering wheel is exactly the same.
Yeah, I was going to
They
get to that.
changed the badge.
I love how you brought up the interior because that's exactly where I was going. This is the exact same steering wheel, other than the grip around, as well as the Infiniti logo in the center, as the Nissan Rogue. It's the exact same one. You got the exact same buttons. Behind that, you got the exact same screen. It's very similar to like the Nissan models. And then the infotainment, thank you for going away from the dual screen that you had in every other Infiniti. I love that. But it's the exact same system as the Nissan ones. Nothing wrong with it, but it's just when you're paying more money than a Pathfinder, I was hoping for a little bit more. Now, don't get me wrong, the interior is absolutely beautiful, especially in this dual tone brown and black. You get stitched leather across, you get real wood. Like there's a lot of good
It's the
things in this.
autograph edition. So
Yes.
that's a special thing. But I noticed the seats, they look paper thin.
Okay,
I know why, because of the third row.
the front seats look good, and that's going to be your zero gravity seats, which I'm a big fan of. But the second seats, you're right, they do look very thin. They're like minivan thin. Like,
Yeah, and when I go captain's chairs on my second row for a 3-row SUV, I want that to be like executive level, especially if you're going to call this the autograph trim, right? Like,
yeah,
think Range Rover Autobiography, right? How upgraded that second row seat is. This seat is, at least by the looks of it, it just doesn't look premium enough.
yeah,
And if I want that luxury brand and the luxury feel, I want to have a more substantial seat. And then you look C pillar back, and the trim is just they gave up on it. They the C pillar back is a Pathfinder.
yeah.
Um,
It definitely looks very Pathfinder esque. It like the photo that they have in press. It even has like shiny plastic. You know what I mean? Like the
mhm.
plastics look cheap even in photos compared to that second row.
Yeah,
I
the third row is an afterthought, and it it needs to be more than that because this doesn't even measure up second row and back to the Palisade or pretty much
The
like
new
any.
MDX looks really good as well.
Yeah, no, MDX has always been the competitor to this. MDX is pretty solid update, and yeah, Infinity. I know it's just budgeting, like,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's less and less. I don't know. I've never been an Infinity guy. It's never made sense to me, the brand, and I've never really felt the need for it. I don't think it will be around in 10 years.
Hmm.
I think even the dealerships are gone. Like, think about it. Like,
Yeah.
dealerships don't want to support this brand. I mean, some of them probably signed some contract. You have to, but they're fading away because who wants to service this brand and sell this brand if there's no money to be made? Your sales guys are not happy because you can't lie through your teeth that much because people they see Lexus, they see Acura, they it's just you know yeah, I don't know, it's kind of sad, and it's a 6-seater configuration. Actually, I mean the third row looks like it could take a third seat.
So here's the thing. If it was a Pathfinder, there'll be a seat in the center. Because it's an Infinity, what they did is they put a tray in the middle and they took out the middle headrest. They're very similar seats to the
Yep, it's not
Pathfinder.
like it's a more comfortable seat.
So, like, if we compare Pilot to MDX, the Pilot has 3 across in the back, MDX has 2. But what they do is for the MDX, they move the seatbelt closer so you get wider seats in the third row.
Mhm.
They didn't do that here. They just took the same seats and put a tray in the center. Why? Why?
Yeah.
Like Infinity had an option to make this a really good product. I feel like they didn't have enough money, right? They put Infinity and Nissan, they put a lot of money in the Rogue, which is their best seller, and the Rogue is amazing. But then when they redid the Pathfinder, they didn't even have money to give it a better engine, a newer engine. Nothing wrong with the VQ that's there, but it's a VQ, it's old. And then with this, I wished for more. I think that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think the Pathfinder will do well, just given its where it's priced. It will
At this
do.
point, most people are going to pick the Pathfinder over this. It's going to be cheaper than this. It's going to have the same seats. It's going to have the same comfort levels as
And you're
this.
gonna have a better dealer network because that's the thing. It's not there's no support for this brand anymore, and I don't know. I'm calling it now. We won't see this brand in 10 years.
All right, I'm going to set a reminder on my calendar
Yeah,
to
20
call you out.
31 and see if Infinity is still around. Because
Yeah.
I think it's already past its expiry date as a brand, and the company does not have money. Okay, well, think about it from a Nissan perspective, right? We're putting money developing one car, but you still have to spend a lot of money to make this second car. And rather than doing that, why don't we just save that money and put it into the one car that does kind of sell and make those products better and just screw the pseudo luxury brand, because we can't build a luxury and attractive enough luxury product, quote unquote, to draw them in, because Nissan's killing it, right?
Yeah.
And in a sense, and they could be even doing even better. Um, because yeah, if you had that Infinity resource directed back into Nissan, they could do even better. And I think that's a good segue into this week's video.
Yeah, it definitely is because this week I had the 2021 Nissan Sentra for review. It's a Sentra, so it's their economy sedan. It has manual, which is actually kind of different and weird because chances is, most people these days when they're buying economy sedans, they're not looking for a manual. I mean, even the brand new 2022 Civic, you can't even get that in the manual. It's automatic only. But Nissan was brave enough, I guess you can kind of say they're brave, to still provide a manual option with the Sentra. Super weird. You're probably not interested in buying one, and you probably never will buy one, but it's available for you.
Yep.
And this isn't like a base model Sentra. Like a lot of other automakers, like they get you a base model with the manual because everyone thinks
Go
manual.
hubcaps and manual.
Yeah, generally speaking, manual is like the cheap base model that really no one really buys. But this isn't. This is like almost top trim, other than like a few bits and pieces.
Yeah, so
But
you
you
can
get
get it in the base S trim and then the higher end SR,
SR.
which SR, I guess that's the one you have there.
Yep.
Super attractive car. I think that is the game changer for Sentra, is that it's no longer a car you're embarrassed to be seen in.
Yeah.
Even the cool ones like the SERs, still kind of embarrassing to look at. Like the '04 SER, like as fun as that car seems like it might be, it looks really cheap.
Yeah.
This, on the other hand, it's got all of that Ultima styling, but kind of drizzled down into a smaller shell and just looks so good. And it's a good look that I think will age well.
Yeah.
Like that is that is really important. The interior, again, really clean, pretty simple interior,
Mm-hmm.
but it looks way nicer than the Corolla.
Yeah.
And it seems like it will age well. I don't know.
I so looking at the Sentra, there's a lot of like Civic vibes to me. So comparing this, the current gen, the 10th gen Civic,
Mhm.
very similar vibes. And
Oh, nice
unlike,
wheels, nice wheels. Pause.
oh, sorry, the Fast FCO4
Yeah, fast FCO4 for the Nissan. I guess it's a
Cup car.
Sentra Cup. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know you
Uh,
can get a Cup car for 40K?
did you know you could get those wheels 18-inch for use the promo code kicking tires for an extra 10% off?
Where?
At overdriveautotuning.com.
Oh, there you go.
If you want to make your Sentra look like this Sentra,
You can buy
you know where to
FCO4 for it.
go. FCO4 gloss black.
Uh, it's actually very inexpensive as well. It's 23,000 Canadian dollars. So
That
like,
is a lot of car for the money.
you know, it's super affordable, and that's what Nissan's trying to sell this as. It's a good car to get into, and a lot of Nissan's like entire lineup is about cars that you just want to get into. Like your first car, the Nissan Kicks is great. The Sentra, that's also really great as like first cars because they're relatively inexpensive. You can get pretty good rates from Nissan. They have a decent dealer network. Their warranty is half decent. Like it makes sense to buy this over like a used car where you're going to have reliability issues, and when something breaks you don't know where to go. Like it just makes sense.
Warranty and financing, like those are great to have when you don't have a lot of money. That, you know, some people are like, oh, you're gonna save money in the long term. Some of us save money in the long term. Some of us pay up the rear for out of warranty repairs. And I think that there's definitely value there, and I think this gives the Koreans a good run for their money because that's where Nissan is. That's their sweet spot, right? They're undercutting your Toyota and your Honda, and they're just giving you something that's a little bit better value and it's kind of its own thing. And something that's what was I gonna say? I do like the styling in the sense that it's very cohesive across the brand. You know, I've talking about it the last few weeks on this podcast, and I think that's really important because I know a lot of young buyers, you know, you move up, you know, because when you're shopping for this kind of car, you're working jobs that, you know, there's a lot of movement as far as like what you're making now and maybe what you'll be making in 2 years. Maybe you want to end your lease a little bit early and get into, and that's how a lot of dealers will attract you to get the new car is that hey, we notice, you know, you have a little bit positive equity on this, we'll waive your transfer fees and whatever, your buyout, early buyout, what have you, we'll get you into the new Altima or the new Maxima or the new Rogue and just give you something that feels that you're more proud to own, something that's fresh. And because you're used to this infotainment system, this steering wheel, you know, if you want to get into the what was that car just now, the QX60, you know, it's like it kind of makes sense. Okay, not the QX60, but going from the Sentra up to a Rogue, I think that is where, okay, my family's growing and I'm still 2 years into my 4-year lease. But I like the way my car looks. I like everything about it so far. It's been a really great
you like the
experience.
service manager that you deal with, and he's super nice to you,
especially at Applewood. Shout out to Applewood Nissan Richmond. Is that the one? Good service team there. Good sales team too.
Actually, they do have a really good sales team. Shout out to Herman.
Yeah, I went there and I test drove a Leaf and they were all super nice and their manager was super nice, and I had the Leaf not been a total pile of crap, I would have. I wanted to give them my business.
Well, but I'll edit that part out when I let Herman know about this.
No. They know their electric car is not competitive. Like, at the end of the day, like it is what it is. Like with the ID4 and like the Model 3, it's just like there's no reason to really consider.
Well, that's why Nissan's making the new electric Aura or something. I can't remember what's exactly called, but they're making a new electric SUV.
Yeah,
and that's going to be super competitive.
Yeah. So SR manual, how this obviously isn't the SCR back in the day.
it's let's be honest. If you're buying this, you're learning manual, then it's fine. If you're buying this as like, oh, somewhat of a sportier sedan, don't. It's a very rubbery manual. The throws are relatively long. They're not as crisp as you want. It's not a great manual driving experience, but it's a great manual learning experience.
But here's the thing: you gotta put ourselves. We've been messing with cars for over a decade. We gotta put yourself back into when you were 17, and And this
Oh,
car, if you've never driven anything else, how would that
oh, it'd be
compare?
amazing because when I was 17, I learned manual on an EG Civic Si with very worn out bushings, which means that I had no idea like
Yeah,
which gear I was in because I can be in first and I can still wiggle it left to right like
yeah.
4 or 5 inches.
And think about it now that as a parent, if you want to buy your kid a sporty-ish car, um, Smith, and you just want them to learn manual because it is a useful technique. Get them something they can finance affordably, maybe help them out with a down payment towards
Yeah.
this, and something that's got all the safety tech,
Yeah.
well, all everything you really need,
Yeah.
and a decent interior, decent warranty, everything, and looks sporty but is not too fast.
Yeah.
Because that a lot of new cars are too fast. Like even I drive the Civic Turbo, and I feel like it's a little bit too fast sometimes. Like I don't know, like those cars. I think the modern Civic Turbo or a Mazda 3 Turbo, like these cars are fast. Like
Yeah.
and they're fast without really thinking about it. Like you
Without
look down
trying.
and you look down and you're at impound speeds
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
because the new cars are so quiet, they're so isolated, there's kind of numb to be honest. And that's the thing is when you were driving an EG, like EG going 40 feels like you're going 100. Like
Yeah.
and that's got its own safety, but I think this is a good middle ground for something that's kind of sweet, and you could modify a little, put some FCO4s on it, lower it a little. It'll look kind of cool. Like it's not something that you'd be embarrassed to own.
No, definitely not.
And as a 17, 18-year old, I think it's kind of a nice car, and it's got a good trunk,
Yeah.
decent back seat.
Yeah.
I look at this because I see the Corolla. Corolla's got their manual, right, with their intelligent manual technology or whatever they call it.
Oh, I
Uh,
think it's only on the base Corolla.
yeah, and then there's the Apex edition.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. The Apex.
And
Yeah. The
then they have
Apex
the
is
the hatchback as well.
right.
But the Corolla, I think, does not. I don't know. Visually, does not excite me like this car.
Yeah.
I think the Sentra just a way better looking car. The Corolla hatch is very good looking, but it's almost useless. Like the hatch is so small,
Yeah.
and the back seat is so cramped, and it just makes you feel claustrophobic inside. I like what they've done with the lighter color headliner too on this one. I just noticed that
Yep.
it really helps to just brighten up the place
Brighten up
because
that interior. It just feels bigger as well.
yeah, because the car is realistically it's not that big, but there's no small cars are so big these days that it's the use of space has really good, and it's yeah, I like this car a lot.
I do as well. Like I definitely don't feel like it's like just a base bargain type vehicle anymore. I feel like this is definitely something that people can step into and be happy with. Because if you think back like 10, 20 years ago, the Sentra was definitely not there.
Yeah, Sentra had a rough decade at least since the CVT, all the CVT issues. Like,
Yeah.
and you know what, Nissan's they picked a good time to kind of save this brand because I think there's a lot of people that still recognize Nissan to be, you know, uh, a normal brand. It's not a budget, you know, you're not a cheap whatever because you're buying a Nissan. I think there's some street cred to this brand. Not
Yeah.
not like street cred, not like it's cool or anything, but they do have some cool cars.
Yeah.
Um, especially with the new 400 and the R35 still being a thing. But they do have some that brand value is there that you don't have to look at it and be like, oh, that guy cheaped out. He bought a Nissan.
Yeah.
And I think for many years, like looking at their used car prices, they really struggled there because the CVTs just no one wants to touch it, right? Because ultimately, this car versus an Apex edition Corolla, it's a few grand. But if you asked me 6 years ago, whether to buy this versus the Corolla, I would say the Corolla all day, because that 4 grand that you save up front, you're getting that back in the long term in terms of resale value. But I don't know anymore. I mean, especially with a manual, like
a 2015 Corolla was pretty bad.
it's not as bad as the CVT. Not as bad as the CVT
Sentra?
Sentras. Yeah, CVT Sentra,
Yeah,
CVT
okay.
Versas. Holy,
Yeah.
CVT Versa. You can get a very new one for 6 grand.
Yeah.
like not very old, and it's just like no one wants to touch those cars with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
Corolla's got their issues too. Like I think everyone had a rough late or early 2010 to like 2015. But Nissan had it pretty bad with their CVT.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's about it for this week, unless there's anything else that you want to go over.
No, I think we covered all the big news stories for this week. Oh, Nürburgring news. I should have mentioned this earlier,
Yeah.
but the first corner at the Nürburgring officially is the Sabine Schmitz corner.
Yes, yes,
Sabine
yes.
Schmitzer. I think that's huge because Nürburgring, honestly, a lot of people like I'm not really like a motorsports fan. I don't follow racing in any way. Like as much as I track and I like to drive, I don't really care about motorsports. But I wouldn't really care about the Nürburgring either had it not been for that Ford Transit and the ring taxi stuff. Like Sabine Schmitz, real inspiration. Like, just an icon of our generation. I
Yeah,
think.
absolutely.
Yeah, sorely missed.
All right. Well, leaving it on a little bit of a sadder note, but we will be back next week with auto news and a whole bunch more, and we'll talk to you then. No
Goodbye for
bagging.
now.
I'm gonna leave that in again.